Part 34. Dressed as a mother-in-law, she leads the whole family to turn over. Author, Bamboo Fence Tea. Chapter 331. Chapter 331 Asking for help in the middle of the night. Let's go. I'll go home with you and talk to Chen Daong. If it doesn't work, please bring back the doctor in the city. Let the doctor check you in front of the villagers of Xinjiakan. Why do they put a basin on your head? Gong Hai became furious and grabbed Gong Mei's hand to walk out. Gong Mei threw him away and cried until her vision was blurred, "It's useless, it's useless. You have heard about it, right? His father is not dead in Dachun, he is back. He has returned home in fine clothes. He is very rich. There is also his aunt. Even the prefect personally went to the port to greet me. Everyone said that the Zhang family is not what it used to be. They openly and secretly mocked me for throwing away the pearl and treating the fish eye as a treasure. It is indeed Chen Daong's fault that I am not living well now, so his family did not get any benefits. Do you know why Chen Daong went back on his word in the first place? He really wanted to marry me at first, but when he found out that there was an uncle in the Zhang family, he was afraid. He didn't even want the bride price and just broke off the engagement. Later, the head of Qinjia village said that Chen Daong wanted to marry me. Don't you think it's strange? Only after I got married did I find out that it was Zhang Dachun's aunt who approached the village chief of Qinjia village. The village chief put pressure on Chen Daong and forced him to perform the marriage. Now their whole family hates me. Even if it is Chen Daong who cannot give birth, my life it won't be easy. What should we do? What should we do? Gong Hai was panicked and angry, and more importantly, he felt helpless, frustrated and painful. Gong Mei just kept crying and couldn't say anything. Gong's mother huddled in the room, not daring to fart, while Gong's father hunched over and worked in a muffled voice. The commotion in the Gong family was so loud that the neighbors either didn't hear it, or no one dared to care about it, and they didn't even dare to watch the excitement. The village chief's wife came over late at night. When she saw Gong Mei coming back, her face looked a little ugly, but she still persuaded her patiently, "Mei, tell me, it was you who wanted to remarry at the beginning, not the Zhang family, right?" "That's right. Your mother-in-law doesn't want you to be a widow, but if you don't want to, how can your mother-in-law force you to die? Nowadays, you cannot blame others for your bad life, you can only blame yourself for not having that kind of luck. Auntie, are you here to see my sister's joke?" Gong Hai's tone was unkind and his words were particularly harsh. Ahem. Gong's mother came out of the house with a gloomy expression. "What's the matter?" The village chief's wife reluctantly stopped talking, shook her head in displeasure, and said angrily, "Chen Daong went to my house to file a complaint, saying that Mei returned to her parents' house quietly again, and that our Hankow village a woman can't have a child but still has such a bad temper. Just because of your Mei, the reputation of the girls in the whole village will be affected. Hey! Ahai, what are you doing?" The rest of the Gong family were also afraid that Gong Hai would really cause trouble, so they all followed him out. However, no matter how they ran, they could not run as fast as the older boy. Before they reached the village chief's house, they heard bursts of miserable howling from inside. The village chief's wife's face was as white as a ghost, and she crawled into the house. Soon, the village chief's wife screamed, and she ran out in fear, shouting, "Kill people, kill people." Gong Mei was so frightened that her legs went weak and she fell down. It is difficult for the young and old girls in the village to marry, so they can only get married with Qinjia village. No one comes to question you, but you are the first to become fierce. The village chief's wife saw Gong Hai charging out menacingly with a woodcutter, and she was so frightened that she quickly chased after him. The village chief's wife's eyes widened for a moment. "Hey! How do you talk like this, kid? Let me tell you this. If your family hadn't done all these bad things, people in our village wouldn't have to be judged by other villages when they go out. We are people who protect our own village, but people say that we are working together to bully the Zhang family, and that there is no good person in Hankou village. In Dongli Villa at this time, old Prince Rui sat upright and looked at everyone in the Zhang family. Tao family and Guo family were at a loss. Even the fiery Zhang Xiaokai didn't dare to breathe in front of the old Prince Rui. It was Zhang Ning who spoke out first to break the awkward situation. Your Majesty, you have also seen that my mother has lived on a boat all her life and has severe leg problems, as well as my sister-in-law. I don't know how well her eyes can recover. Can you save my brother's life? Zhang family, I'm extremely grateful, but my mother and her friends have never seen much of the world and don't know how to talk to you, so don't be surprised. Tao Shi smiled cautiously, her whole body tense. Mr. Rui gave Zhang Ning a meaningful look, drank a drink, and waved his hand. The way is natural. Everything is done according to one's heart. There is no need to tell me about the twists and turns. As he spoke, his eyes fell on Zhang Changkong. He teased the child twice, and said thoughtfully, "Is this the only seedling of the Zhang family?" Zhang Ning sighed and nodded, and just as he was about to speak out, Butler Zhu suddenly led Gong Mei in. As soon as Gong Mei entered the door, she knelt down without raising her head and kept sobbing. The faces of everyone in the Zhang family changed. Zhang Xiaokai was furious. "Mother Chen, this is not the place you should be. You went to the wrong door." Zhang Ning looked at Butler Zhu. Butler Zhu hurriedly explained, "Madam, this woman has been kneeling outside the villa to beg to see you, but she won't leave. She even threatened to die. She also said that she was the biological mother of the young master of the Zhang family. There were people coming and going in the inn, and she didn't want to add anything to others. Tanzi had no choice but to bring her over." Zhang Ning hated this kind of drama the most. He immediately dropped his face and dropped his chopsticks. Even Butler Zhu was so frightened that he knelt down. Gong Mei shivered, trembling like a frightened deer, and cried so pitifully. Zhang An stopped Zhang Ning, who was about to speak, frowned, and asked, "Gong Mei, for the sake of giving birth to a son for Da Chun, I will give you a chance to tell you what is going on." "Dad. This woman is so greedy. When she saw our family was in poverty, she was eager to leave our family and remarry. Later, the husband did not dare to have her, and she shamelessly stayed outside our restaurant, saying that she was reluctant to let the child come back. Bah! I have never seen anyone so shameless. My brother was so blind that he was fascinated by her. If it weren't for her, my brother wouldn't have lost his life." Zhang Xiaokai was full of resentment and shouted away the things Gong Mei had done before. Although old Prince Rui thought that Zhang Xiaokai had no rules and she was making such a fuss without her elders saying a word, but after hearing what she said, he could understand her anger. He immediately frowned and said slowly, "So heartless and heartless. Even if a righteous person encounters difficulties, it is her own fault." Gong Mei's tears fell even more fiercely and she kept sobbing, "Uncle Zhang, Aunt, I know I'm not a good person, and it's normal for you to hate me, but Ahai is innocent." He was so angry that he hurt Chen Daong. Now people from Qinjia village are making a big fuss in the village, asking Ahai to pay for Chen Daong's life. "I'm really desperate and can only come here to beg you." Dressed as a mother-in-law, she leads the whole family to turn over. Author, Bamboo Fence Tea. Chapter 332. Chapter 332, The Chen family will not be spared. Gong Hai hurts people. Zhang An turned to look at Tao and Guo with a puzzled face. If he remembered correctly, Gong Hai was the person with the best temper in the Gong family. Even Zhang Xiaokai and Xian Kun were stunned for a moment. They had previously suspected that Gong Mei came to the door because they knew Zhang An had returned safely, so they came to fight Qiu Feng. They never expected that it was because of Gong Hai. The Zhang family had good relations with the Gong family before, and the Zhang family also knew what was going on with the Gong family. Gong Hai was the transparent person of the Gong family. Just like his father who couldn't do anything, he had no sense of existence and only knew how to work. But occasionally he would send some small fish and shrimps to their family. The one person Zhang Xiaokai hated the most in the Gong family was Gong Hai. "What's going on?" Tao Shi said worriedly. Zhang Xiaokai didn't make any sound this time. Gong Mei sobbed and rolled up her sleeves, revealing the hideous wound. "Kikai," cried, "there are no good people in the Chen family. They said I couldn't have children and beat me every day. I ran away home." Ahai was very angry when he found out. At this time, Chen Daong came to pick me up in Hangkou village. Instead of going to my house, he ran to the village chief's house. He said a lot of bad things about me, and Ahai couldn't bear it anymore, so he rushed over with a woodcutter. This Tao was startled, her face turned pale, and she subconsciously looked at Zhang Ning. Seeing her like that, Zhang Ning knew that Mrs. Tao was soft-hearted. She sighed inexplicably and said with Grandma Yu, "Send someone to report to the government office and bring the Gong family and Chen family to the government office. If you have any grievances, tell them in public, open it and leave it to the prefect." Gong Mei was so frightened that she could not kneel down. Zhang An asked, "Little sister, do you have to pay with your life in this situation?" Prince Rui was speechless at his stupid son and hit him the head. "What are you worrying about? You hurt someone but you didn't kill someone. At most, you can go to jail for a few years and then pay some money. You are the one who caused the trouble. Bear in mind, the emperor commits the same crime as the common people, no one is exempted." Zhang Ning agrees very much. Zhang An asked cautiously, "Godfather, how long will you be in jail? I watched that child Gong Hai grow up. He is a kind and good boy. Our village is an outsider, and many people in the village don't want to talk to us. But Ahai would say hello every time he saw me, and sometimes he would secretly send some small fish and shrimps to our house." Mr. Rui heard what he meant and was extremely helpless. "Okay. Since you said so, I will go see Ji Wei in person and try to give him a lighter sentence. However, we still have to wait for Ji Wei's review to know the specific situation. If the main fault lies with Gong Hai, even if you plead for mercy, it will be useless." Zhang An was overjoyed and quickly thanked him. Mr. Rui has already spoken, so Zhang Ning can only accompany him. So a group of people left the banquet, got into the carriage and entered the city. At night, an official would have to go to Hangkou village to coordinate the investigation, and wait until daybreak for the real ceremony. Ji Wei arranged a courtyard for everyone to stay in, taking care of everything. Gong Mei had never seen the magistrate be so kind. The regret in her heart was like a wasteland, boundless. At midnight the next day, the government office went to the court to hear the case. After hearing the news, many people came to join in the fun. In the court hall, the Chen family carried Chen Daong inside, who had been wrapped into a rice dumpling. Each of them looked gloomy and wished they could tear the Gong family alive. In addition to Gong Hai's family of 4, the village chief's family also came. After all, the incident happened in their home, and they had to come to testify. Everyone knelt on the ground and started to quarrel as soon as they saluted. Ji Wei had been dealing with it all night yesterday and his head hurt. When he heard the two sides starting again, he immediately slapped the gavel loudly and said, "Quiet. If they make a fuss, arrest them all and beat them up." Everyone was dissatisfied, but in the end they endured it. Ji Wei breathed a sigh of relief and looked at Gong Hai, his brows were cold and majestic. "Gong Hai, tell me. Why did you chop Chen Daong? Do you know that you almost died?" The common people know Gong Hai's eyes were dull and his expression was numb, as if he had already resigned himself to his fate. Gong's mother cried loudly, "Sir, that's not what happened. It was Chen Daong and the Chen family who beat my daughter black and blue. Ahai did it to vent his anger on his sister. He was just too angry and did not want to kill anyone." "You fart. Your daughter can't give birth to a child and is occupying the latrine without shit. It's only natural for me to teach my useless daughter-in-law a lesson, Mother Chen retorted angrily. Not to be outdone, Mother Gong said, my daughter has given birth to a son a long time ago. It was Chen Daong who couldn't give birth. Don't let my daughter take the blame. Bitch, I told you to talk nonsense. Mother Chen was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, and she wanted to fight Mother Gong again with all her teeth and claws. Ji Wei slapped the gavel heavily and shouted angrily, didn't you hear what I said? Come here. Give me 3 big slaps each before continuing the trial. Gong's mother and Chen's mother were so frightened that they quickly begged for mercy. 3 big boards won't kill them, and they won't have to suffer any physical pain. They will just be severely embarrassed. This is good, the 2 women are indeed honest. Ji Wei felt better and turned his attention to Gong Mei. Why did the Chen family beat you? Gong Mei looked pitiful as she knelt there, but she didn't miss a single word. Sir, the Chen family blamed the civilian women for not being able to get pregnant. The civilian women also secretly visited the doctor. The doctor said that there was nothing wrong with the civilian woman's health. The woman asked Chen Daong to go and see the doctor. As a result, Chen Daong became so angry that he beat a woman for the first time. The woman's face was swollen from his beating, and she couldn't get off the bed. He also called the woman a widower, which made him miserable. It was clear that when the woman had just lost her husband, he couldn't wait to find someone to come to the woman's natal home to complain. Dear, I also gave you a lot of gifts, which is very sincere. The mother of a civilian woman couldn't bear to have a civilian woman become a widow at such a young age, and she was afraid that she would miss this opportunity and never find a family with more suitable conditions than the Chen family, so she let the civilian woman remarry regardless. Later, Chen Daong was frightened and regretted that he did not want to marry a civilian woman. The reputation of civilian women had disappeared and her life was ruined. When the civilian woman was desperate, Chen Daong said that he would fulfill the marriage and marry me. Everything was done according to the wishes of the Chen family, but Chen Daong turned around and said that it was the women of the common people who had harmed him. How could this be true? The woman's body had no problem, reminding him to see the doctor. What's the reason why he did it? The civilian woman's brother also knew these things, so he hurt him because he couldn't bear it anymore. Sir, Mrs. Chen's voice was plaintive and tactful, shocking the world and weeping. Ji Wei was so frightened that he almost dropped the gavel in his hand. Zhang Ning and others who were listening to the trial behind the screen also felt uncomfortable and frowned. Mother Chen glared at Gong Mei resentfully, but she didn't dare to continue her mischief. Sir, it's obvious that Gong Mei is restless and hooking up with men, so my son will fix her. It's not what she said. Sir. When my daughter came to their house, she was as tired as a donkey every day. She did all kinds of work and didn't even go out to the Chen family yard. Where could she go to hook up with others? They were guilty of treason and framed my daughter. Mother Gong was filled with indignation and anger. His chest heaved violently. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a mother-in-law, she leads the whole family to turn over. Author, Bamboo Fence Tea. Chapter 333. Chapter 333 The Fate of the Initiator. At this time, the Yaman walked up to Ji Wei and whispered a few words in his ear. Ji Wei looked incomprehensible and took a deep look at the Chen family. He made Chen's mother, Chen's father, and others tremble all over. He slowly said, both sides are holding their own opinions now. The best way is to let the doctor check the pulses of Gong Mei and Chen Daong on the spot. Who has problems and who is fine can be known at a glance. If Gong Mei is really healthy and clearly tells the Chen family about this, but the Chen family still refuses to let him go and abuses him, then Gong Hai's injury to Chen Daong is excusable. If the problem lies with Gong Mei, Chen Daong, and Chen Jiake, he is a victim, I will not spare Gong Hai lightly. This method seemed to be okay, but after careful consideration, something seemed wrong. Ji Wei did not give them a chance to object, and immediately asked the Yamen to invite several famous doctors in the city. These people usually pay several hundred yuan for medical consultation, which ordinary people cannot afford. Now, thanks to Gong Hai, so many doctors can treat the young couple. The people watching don't know whether they should be envious or not. The Chen family and the Gong family all looked nervously at the doctor who checked Gong Mei's pulse. The Chen family was even more nervous than them. Mother Chen couldn't help but said, "My son was injured like this by Gong Hai just now. Is it accurate?" The doctor was speechless. "Don't worry, sister, I didn't hurt him or stab him in the stomach, so what's the problem?" This statement made everyone laugh. Ji Wei pulled back his hair vigorously. It was the first time such a thing happened in court and he thought it was ridiculous. After the diagnosis by the 5 doctors, the young man in charge took the lead and said, "Sir, after checking the pulse of the grassroots, I found that this woman's body is not seriously injured. At most, she has some qi and blood deficiency. She can just eat more to replenish her body. But the situation of this man is somewhat complicated. He is suffering from depletion of essence and weak vitality, resulting in an imbalance of yin and yang and a loss of support." Others nodded in agreement. The common people second the proposal. With so many people seconding the idea, Chen's mother panicked. "What do you mean, what's wrong with my son?" Seeing how panicked she was, the old doctor shook his head and said, "To put it simply, it means kidney deficiency is infertile. Even if we find him a woman who has given birth to 7 or 8 children, he won't be able to give birth to a child." Boom! Mother Chen screamed as if she was struck by lightning. "Impossible! Impossible! How could a man not be able to give birth? It must be a woman's fault that she cannot give birth. Tell me, did you team up with the Gong family to slander my son? How could you? You are also a doctor, how can you do such a nasty thing?" The people who were watching couldn't stand listening anymore, and they all accused Chen's mother. "These are all the most powerful doctors in the city. Do you mean to offend all the doctors by saying this? Even the richest man in the city may not be able to bribe these doctors. Bid, you came here just by opening your mouth, are you crazy?" People in Xinjiakan realized that something was wrong and reprimanded Chen's mother one after another. Mother Chen's energy was drained out of most of her energy in an instant, and she no longer had the intention to continue arguing with Mother Gong. Gong's mother was extremely angry. "I just said, how could my daughter not be able to give birth to a child if she is fine? It is clear that there is something wrong with Chen Daong. You have your own problems, and you beat my daughter into a state of disgrace. Everyone will judge, my son should he stand up for his sister." At this time, the people watching were silent, but the balance in their hearts was all tilted towards the Gong family. Mother Chen realized what she was doing and started to cry miserably. Before she could even howl twice, she was frightened into silence by the gavel. Seeing that Chen's mother had just suffered such a big blow, Ji Wei did not hold him accountable, so he quickly made a judgment. The Chen family hit the person first, and Gong Hai had a reason for hurting the person. He fined the Gong family to compensate the Chen family 2 taels of silver. Gong Hai has 10 sticks and is freed from prison. This result made everyone in the Gong family heave a sigh of relief. The Chen family was very dissatisfied. They had already lost face by not allowing Chen Daong to have children. If the trouble continued, the entire Qinjia village would become a laughing stock. They could only break their teeth and swallow. At this moment, Gong Mei suddenly kowtowed hard and kept begging, "Sir, the civilian woman was tortured by the Chen family, and the civilian woman's brother injured Chen Daong. If the civilian woman goes back with them, she will definitely die. I beg you, sir, For the people, the wife made the decision and allowed the women of the country to reconcile. Mother Chen really planned to go back to Gongmei to settle the accounts after Chiu, but Gongmei guessed it in advance. She was so angry that she lost her mind. Without saying a word, she rushed over, grabbed Gongmei's hair and beat her violently. Gong's mother couldn't bear it, so she immediately rushed over and pressed Chen's mother down, scratching her face hard. The court was filled with two women screaming. It took a lot of effort for the cotter to separate them. Gongmei covered her face and cried loudly, looking really pitiful. The people watching all shouted, "Harmony! Harmony must be done!" Behind the screen, Tao Shi and others all looked at Zhang Ning. Whether Gongmei can reconcile with Li only needs a word from Zhang Ning. If she agrees, Ji Wei can pronounce the sentence on the spot. If she doesn't agree, Gongmei can only continue to go back to the Chen family to live in dire straits. Zhang Ning kicked the ball back. "Mom, brothers and sisters, don't look at me. I just did it to make them be kind. In fact, it has nothing to do with me whether they are living well or not." "What are you doing now?" Thought. Tao thought for a long time and said in a low voice, "She is Chang Kang's biological mother after all. Although I hate her, I also sympathize with her. It's enough for her to be in this situation now, but I'm worried that she will come back to haunt her after she leaves. Our family really doesn't want to have anything to do with her anymore." Mrs. Guo nodded in agreement. "I think so too. I have let go of the resentment in my heart. If Da Chun's father can come back safely, I will have no regrets in this life. If Gongmei returns to the Chen family and cannot survive, it is better not to go back, but I don't want her to keep coming back." Zhang Ning slowly lowered his eyes and smiled, "Okay. I understand." Ji Wei received Zhang Ning's message and sent someone to whisper a few words to Gongmei. Gongmei looked a little surprised. She only hesitated for a moment before gritting her teeth and nodding hard. Ji Wei said in a deep voice, "The evidence is conclusive that Gong's mother-in-law tortured and beat Gong in front of me. In order to ensure Gong's personal safety, I allow Gong and Chen Daong to reconcile. From now on, Gong and the Chen family, it doesn't matter anymore." "Why? This woman caused my son so much harm. Why did she just make peace with her just because she said we should?" Chen's mother made a fuss, tears streaming down her face, and declared her unwillingness and resentment with her actions. Ji Wei stood up and sneered, "When you were eager to marry the newly widowed Gong family, the Zhang family must have thought the same way as you." Mother Chen was stunned for a moment, even her eyes remained motionless. Chen Daong was lying on the stretcher, staring at Gongmei coldly, gritting his teeth and threatening, "Just wait, I will never let you go. And your whole family, I will hold your whole family back even if I die." He can't have children, his life and reputation are all gone, and now he's been hurt so badly. It's hard to say whether there will be any sequelae. All of this is thanks to the Gong family, and he will definitely not let them off lightly. Dressed as a mother-in-law, she leads the whole family to turn over. Author, Bamboo Fence Tea. Chapter 334. Chapter 334. The accident arrives before tomorrow. Gongmei was so frightened by Chen Daong's words that she turned pale and crawled away quickly, not daring to get close to him at all. The farce between the two families finally ended like this, and even the people who were watching were filled with sadness. Chen Daong's tribesmen cursed and carried him back, while the people in Hangkou village lagged behind. The people in the court dispersed, and the village chief's wife pointed at Gongmei's head and cursed, "Do you want to kill your parents and brother? You saw the expressions of those in the Chen family just now. Do you think they can spare your family a life of mercy? I have never seen a woman as troublemaking as you." Gong's mother, Kikai, lost her previous arrogance and only defended Gongmei. "It's not our fault, so why should they bother us? Besides, the case was decided by the prefect, what else do they want?" The village chief's wife was furious, "Yes. At most, they just don't like the people in our village and won't do anything. But what about Chen Daong? Today he has lost all face and face. He is a man who cannot have children. What's the difference between being a eunuch? From now on, people will point fingers at you when you step out of the house. I wonder if he doesn't hate your family to death. If he really doesn't want to live and die with your whole family, where can you go to reason with him? You didn't even think of this, and you still dared to make such a fuss. No wonder you had such a quarrel with the Zhang family in the first place. I no longer want to deal with your family's bad affairs from now on, you can just take care of it yourself. Village people left one after another. Gong's mother held Gong Mei's hand helplessly. What should we do? What if Chen Daong really makes trouble for us? If I had known, I would have taken action at that time. If he had been injured more seriously, it would have been better not to get up for the rest of his life. Gong's father was speechless after hearing Gong's mother's words, and said dully, if that's the case, it can't be solved with 2 taels of silver. Let's go. Let's talk about it when we get back. The family brought Gong Hai home after being beaten with a cane. Although it has entered autumn in Kuzhu Prefecture, the weather has been stuffy these past few days. The house Gong Hai lives in is small and airtight. It is inconvenient for Gong's father to take care of him, so he simply places him in a thatched shed in the yard. The sea breeze blows slowly, which can also relieve the burning pain of his wounds. Pain. Gong's father was busy giving Gong Hai herbs, Gong's mother went to cook, and Gong Mei helped outside the thatched shed. The whole family did not rest until it was almost dark. Gong Mei looked at the fishing net hanging on the outer wall and said to Gong's father, Dad, I will go to the sea with you tomorrow. Father Gong shook his head, you are still injured, and you have just reconciled. Let's rest at home for 2 days. The situation at sea has not been right these 2 days, and I don't plan to go to the sea so soon. Gong's mother was very anxious when she thought that her family had just lost 20 taels of silver. She asked urgently, what's wrong? If you can't go to the sea, you can go to Wajiang. A Hai will probably have to lie down like this for 10 days and a half. He can't do it if you want to be lazy, everyone will starve to death sooner or later. Auntie, don't speak so aggressively. Dad is not the kind of lazy person. Gong Mei depressedly interrupted Gong's mother's constant scolding. Father Gong sighed and frowned, I have found that the sea is not calm in the past few days. The waves are bigger than before. Sometimes a wave may overturn the boat. Obviously there is no strong wind or heavy rain, I wonder if the waves were too big and the fish were hiding. We set the net for a long time and found nothing. Yesterday, everyone said they would get together to discuss how to deal with it, but when it came to the Chen family's incident, they couldn't figure it out. Hearing this, Gong Mei felt a little uneasy. Dad, since it's not safe, let's not go into the sea first. Nothing is more important than life. I won't stay at home and eat and drink for free. I will go to Pingfu Island in 2 days. Being a monk in Shuiyuan will not affect a Hai's marriage. A monk, what's going on? Gong's mother became anxious, dropped her work and ran to Gong Mei to ask. Gong Mei lowered her eyes and said in a calm voice, Auntie, it is the best choice for me to become a monk in my current situation. If I stay at home, it will not be good for anyone. Even the villagers will alienate our family. I will leave and live a happy life in 2 years, everyone has forgotten about these things. Of course, this is also the exchange between me and Li. Gong's mother shook her body and burst into tears, crying with regret, how can the Zhang family be so heartless? I also gave birth to a posthumous son for Zhang Da-chun. Gong Mei had a wry smile on her lips and tears in her eyes, Auntie, if it weren't for that child, my end would have been even worse. Now that I'm in this situation, the Chen family has also suffered retribution, and the Zhang family and Guang, and it's only then that you got angry. From now on, you can live your lives honestly and they won't trouble us again. She knew her punishment was over as soon as Zhang Ning allowed her to leave her. Gong's mother was really scared from the bottom of her heart. She muttered twice, but in the end she didn't dare to say a single word of complaint. Since Gong Hai was sleeping in the hut and was still injured, the family was worried and kept watch in the hut. They could help Gong Hai as soon as possible when he wanted to relieve himself in the middle of the night. The first half of the night was fine, everything was calm, and there was not even a sea breeze. In the second half of the night, a strong wind suddenly came up, and there was a thunder in the sky, which frightened the family of 4 sleeping in the thatched hut until one Buddha appeared and 2 Buddhas ascended to heaven. "What's wrong? What's wrong?" Gong's mother sat up in a panic, feeling her whole body shaking and the world spinning. "I'm so dizzy." "Auntie, I'm so dizzy too." Gong Mei almost couldn't sit still, so she supported Gong's father to steady herself. The next moment, the straw shed suddenly collapsed. Before the 4 members of the Gong family could finish screaming, the sound of houses collapsing could be heard from all around. The huge movement scared the 4 members of the family to the point of flying away. When they struggled to climb out of the thatched shed, they found that their house was gone. A bolt of lightning flashed across, and the family of 4 were stunned by the sight in front of them. At 5 o'clock in the morning, you can usually see some light, but today, the city is covered with dark clouds. It is still dark all around, and you can't see your fingers. Heavy rain is pouring down. The streets of Kuzhu Prefecture are filled with rainwater, and every house seems to be an island in the water. Several teams of people were walking through the streets, busy rescuing people buried in rubble. The lights in Dongli Villa are brightly lit. Zhang Ning woke up early and has been sitting in the front hall waiting for news. Zhu San came in the rain. He felt as if he had fallen into the water. Even his trousers were dripping. He did not dare to come in. He just answered outside the threshold, "Madam, I have seen it in the Zhuangzi." Fortunately, our houses are all newly built. The bricks and tiles made specially by the second young master are very strong. There are only a few cracks in the houses, but there are no signs of collapse. The younger one has asked the people in those houses to move out and stay in the inn temporarily. "Is the inn okay?" Zhang Ning's frown did not relax at all. Zhu San nodded heavily. "I checked each of the small rooms and found that they were all in good condition. However, the guests at the inn were a little frightened. Butler Zhu had already sent someone to calm them down. Our village in Zhuangzi was not affected. I heard that some houses in Xinghua village collapsed. Fortunately, the Zhang family stayed at Dongli Villa last night. Dressed as a mother-in-law, she leads the whole family to turn over." Author, Bamboo Fence Tea. Chapter 335. Chapter 335, Stay Calm in Times of Crisis. Since Mr. Rui lived in Dongli Villa and it was difficult for Zhang'an to return to the Zhang family, Tao and the others were reluctant to separate from Zhang'an, so they moved here temporarily, but they escaped the disaster. Zhang Ning Sunyan was no longer calm. "What about the Su family? How is the Su family's house?" "Second young madam, don't worry, the younger one has been taken over to sea, but now there is flood everywhere, so we have to wait a little longer," Zhu San said quickly. Zhang Ning patted the hand that made the promise soothingly and said to Zhu San, "Thank you for your hard work. Go down and change into dry clothes. I'll report back later if there is any news." After Zhu San left, Sun Yan couldn't help crying secretly. Zhang Ning was also anxious, but couldn't say anything to comfort him. At this moment, Ji Wei came in with a group of official servants, all in a state of embarrassment, following Butler Zhu. As soon as he entered the door, Ji Wei changed his face and knelt down. "Master Ho, I am incompetent. Please save the people of Kuzhu Prefecture." Zhang Ning was dumbfounded. "Master Ji, what's going on?" Yang Erden and Butler Zhu hurried over to help the limp Ji Wei to a chair. Ji Wei's hair was messy and he was dirty. He had no time to care. He only choked and said, "The earth dragon turned over. The water was so big that the sea water rushed into the city. Several fishing villages on the seaside were washed away by the sea water. They all died. Everyone died, the streets in the city were flooded, and many houses collapsed. The government office did not have enough manpower to save them. The injured people were all placed in the government office now. I don't know how long the government office can hold on, or whether the Earth Dragon's overturn will happen again. The city is already in chaos. I can't think of any other way but to come to the prince and the marquis for help. Zhang An helped old Prince Rui step inside. Old Prince Rui sat down firmly with a solemn look on his face. The Earth Dragon turned over and the sea water poured in. Ji Wei, you are really unlucky. Originally, with Zhang Ning's contribution in Kuzhu Prefecture, Ji Wei, the prefect, would also benefit from it, and his promotion was just around the corner. Now that such a big thing has happened, if he can't handle it, he will not be able to keep his hat. Ji Wei burst into tears. Your Majesty, please think of something. Zhang Ning walked out of the yard, looked at the situation in Dongli Villa, and said, the high-lying areas on the outskirts of the city should not be flooded. There are still some people in Dongli Villa who can be lent to you for dispatch. The suffering people in the city can send people to Dongli. The villa or the village next to Dongli Villa is originally a dowry for the little girl. The little girl is still young and the courtyard is uninhabited. It shouldn't be a problem to accommodate hundreds of people. Yang Erden said, Mom, I'll follow you and see if I can help. Yang Santi asked, Master Ji, have you sent someone to visit Kuzhu Academy? Ji Wei shook his head. Kuzhu Academy has a high terrain and mountains. It is all made of green brick buildings. If there is nothing wrong with the government office, there should be no serious problems with Kuzhu Academy. The two brothers looked at each other. Yang Sizhuang understood. Third brother, you and second brother go to help. I will take the boys back to the academy to see if everyone is willing to do their part. Even though the child was so active, Zhang An didn't want to cower all the time. Although Tao Shi and Guo Shi were very worried, they still followed Zhang An's wishes and let him go out. Nearly all the people in Dongli Villa who could be used were mobilized. Not long after they left, the rain outside weakened a bit and the sky got a lot brighter. At least they could see their surroundings. Zhang Ning held an umbrella and went to Zhuangzi's warehouse to count the grain. He told Butler Zhu, pay attention to the situation in the government office. If necessary, we will open a warehouse to provide disaster relief. Also, send someone back to Ping'an County to see if Ping'an County is affected. If there is no impact, please ask Mr. Xie, the county magistrate, to help dispatch some food and medicinal materials. Mr. G is in a panic at this time. I am afraid he is not thinking carefully. Steward Zhu left for a while, and Zhu San came back with the carriage. When Mrs. Zhou came down with several old people and children, Sun Yan rushed over and hugged Mrs. Zhou regardless. Auntie, are you not hurt? It's okay, Mrs. Zhou said angrily, hurry up and help, someone is injured. Zhang Ning also threw up his umbrella and stepped forward to help. Coming with Mrs. Zhou were 3 elderly grandmothers, 2 women in their 30s and 40s, and 4 or 5 children. If the carriage was not too small to fit, it could probably have been filled with more. After everyone came down, Zhu San reported to Zhang Ning, Madam, there are still some trapped people in Xinghua village. The younger ones have to go over to pick them up. Zhang Ning nodded repeatedly, bring more people and pull the bullock carts over. Get the elderly, children, and those who are not good enough to get back first. Zhu San followed the instructions and drove the carriage away quickly. After Mrs. Zhou settled those people, she sat in the big house to warm herself by the fire, her eyes unfocused from exhaustion. Sun Yan asked worriedly, Auntie, how is your family? Mrs. Zhou took a deep breath and smiled, it's okay. Our house was built by our son-in-law, and it is strong. However, the terrain of Xinghua village is not as high as Dongli Villa, and it is easy for the house to be flooded when there is a flood in the village. I didn't want to leave when Zhu-san passed by, but he said you were worried about me, so I had to get in the car with him. When I went out, I heard someone in the village calling for help, so we went over to help, tisk tisk tisk. It was so miserable. Daughter, not everyone is as lucky as us. There are many poor families in the village. The houses they live in leak rain in the summer and air leak in the winter. The earth dragon turned over and suddenly collapsed. Many people were buried inside. When my mother-in-law went to help, some of the whole family was gone, and some were left with only children or the elderly. In her long life, I have never seen anything worse than this. Many of the children who were just sent to me have lost their parents. I don't know what to do in the future. Ms. Jo's tears fell one by one as she spoke. She looked like she was not in good spirits. Sun Yan patted her shoulder, not knowing how to persuade her. Zhang Ning felt very uncomfortable, but she would not remain immersed in grief. She stood up and said, I will go to the city to help. I promise, you will take good care of the children at home. If anyone comes to ask for help, look at the arrangements. Mother-in-law, Xinghua village, someone will send it over there and leave it to you to arrange. Yang Area rushed out at this moment, her eyes full of determination. Uncle, can I go with you to help? Yang Xiao also led the maid and grandma out. Mom, I can do it too. Zhang Ning smiled at her. Okay. You can help your sister-in-law guard the villa, and the children will be left to you to take care of. Okay. Yang Xiao nodded heavily. Leaving the affairs of the villa to them, Zhang Ning had nothing to worry about and immediately took Grandma Yu Huaji and Yang Area into the city in a carriage. Not long after the carriage reached the official road, the road ahead was blocked by floods. If they had not walked this road often, they would have thought that there was a vast river ahead. Huaji was a little anxious. Madam, the carriage can't enter the city in this situation. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a mother-in-law, she leads the whole family to turn over. Author, Bamboo Fence Tea. Chapter 336. Chapter 336. The benefits of a house. She thought about it and had no choice but to get down and ask the driver to rush back to the villa and drag the 2 bamboo rafts over to the villa. The 2 bamboo rafts are used for cleaning fish ponds and are only used a few times a year. I never expected that they would come in handy at this time. With the bamboo raft, the group of people could finally move forward. Along the way, the servant holding the bamboo raft kept exclaiming, Madam, the water is at least 1 meter deep. In some places, even the bamboo poles cannot touch the bottom. I don't know what's going on in the city. Will the situation be better? While talking, they also saw some children sitting helplessly in a wooden basin, crying in fear and floating in the water. Everyone's expressions changed greatly, and they quickly moved the bamboo raft over to fish out the child. At the same time, they also rescued many people who were struggling in the water and asking for help. They haven't reached Fukan yet, and their bamboo raft has no room for them, so they can only send people back before continuing. Finally made it to the city. Zhang Ning found that the situation in the city was worse than they expected. You can see homeless and injured people everywhere on the streets, and the government officials can't take care of them at all. She went to the government office immediately, but failed to find Jiwei, so she could only turn around and ask someone to row a boat to Kuzhu Academy. Here we finally saw the busy figures of Jiwei and Zhong Bohan. Everyone was very surprised that Zhang Ning personally took part in the danger. Why are you here too, Lord Marquis? There is a lot of chaos here now, please go back, Zhong Bohan said with a serious face. Zhang Ning jumped off the bamboo raft, closed his umbrella, stood in front of Zhong Bohan, and said firmly, Academician Zhong, I have sent people to rush back to Ping'an County to investigate the situation. If there is no problem in Ping'an County, Mr. Xie will send someone to bring food and food. The medicinal materials came to support. As for the other counties, after all, I have no relationship with the local magistrate. Zhonbohan quickly turned to call Ji Wei. Have you sent someone to bring in reinforcements? Ji Wei turned around, his eyes bloodshot, his expression a little dazed. Yes. I asked the prince and the marquis for help. Zhonbohan was furious. I'm asking you if you have sent anyone out to inquire about the situation below. Why are you talking to me about the prince and the marquis? Ji Wei shook his head without thinking. Not yet. Zhonbohan almost fell over because he was so angry. Why don't you go quickly? Why are you wasting your time here with me if you don't do anything serious? As he spoke, he let out a long sigh and bowed to Jiangning. Master Ho, Lao Ji is probably in chaos and cannot take charge of the overall situation. I would like to trouble you to give me a few pointers. He didn't even think of asking the county magistrate for help just now. Fortunately, Jiangning thought carefully. With Jiangning stepping up to help share half of Ji Wei's pressure, he also adjusted his condition as quickly as possible. In the evening, half of the water that rushed into the city receded, and the rescue was carried out in an orderly manner. Half of the government officials rushed to the fishing village in the east of the city by boat to search and rescue. Unfortunately, the damage here was too severe, and there were only a few houses that survived. The fishermen who came down were almost homeless, but they had no right to grieve and had to join the search and rescue team to help. The floods did not recede completely until the evening of the next day. There was still light rain in the sky, and the streets were full of people wearing sackcloth and mourning. The disaster status of each village is being sent one after another. Yang Sizhuang and several classmates of about the same age helped compile the information in the academy. A group of people concentrated on writing and drawing on the desk. Zhou Mian brought Guo over and looked around quietly. His eyes fell on Yang Sizhuang. He walked over gently and asked in a low voice in his ear, Brother Sizhuang, how is the situation? Yang Sizhuang said without raising his head, it's very serious. The 6 fishing villages along the coast were hit the hardest. Among them, the 4 villages in Qinjia village, Hangkou village, Jiangchuo village, and Jiangxin village were the most serious. It is roughly estimated that more than 1,300 people died, and more than 1,000 people were injured. Liang Xiaoqian next to Yang Sizhuang answered, although other fishing boats did not suffer such heavy casualties, it is estimated that 800 or 900 people were killed. The most important thing is that their houses were all damaged, their belongings were washed away by the flood, and everything was lost gone. I looked through the geography of Kang's Huge and found that there has only been one earth dragon turning over in Kuzhu Prefecture in the past century. This is the second time, Yang Sizhuang said. Everyone looked up at him. Liang Xiaoqian was very excited. Brother Sizhuang, what does the geography say? When was the last time? Was it serious? Yang Sizhuang nodded heavily. The last time was about 70 years ago. According to geographical records, the earth dragon turned over in the corner of the sea, and the waves surged 10 meters. The city suddenly became a country, and only 1 in 10 survived. The prefect at that time, he was also killed when Dalong turned around, and there was no one in charge in Kuzhu Prefecture. When the news was sent to the court, the surviving people died of illness, starvation, and some became refugees. Hearing this, everyone in the room couldn't calm down for a long time. Zhou Mian poked Yang Sizhuang on the back. Yang Sizhuang suddenly turned around and looked into Zhou Mian's red eyes like a little white rabbit. He was a little flustered and said, Sister Mian, who bullied you? Zhou Mian shook his head in a low mood, took the cloth bag from Guo and stuffed it with him. He spoke in a muffled voice, Brother Sizhuang, there is chaos outside now, and my father and mother won't let me go out. I thought about it, I can only come to you. The baggage contains the fine gold and silver I have saved over the years, probably more than 10,000 taels. Although it may not be of much use, It is mostly my heart. Please help me give it to Aunt Zhang. A group of students stood up and bowed to Zhong Mian. Miss Zhong is so righteous. Liang Xiaoqian even more excitedly took off his purse and placed it in front of Yang Sizhuang. Sizhuang, I only have so much money with me, and I will give it all to you. Please give it to the marquis. With them taking the lead, others donated generously. Yang Sizhuang was filled with emotion. He wrote down everyone's names and money before leaving with the money. In the government office, Ji Wei and Zhang Ning were sitting at the top, and below were various officials who came to report the situation. Construction officer Liang Hongchang stepped forward and said, Master Marquis, Your Excellency, I have carefully calculated the damage to the city. The damage to the south of the city was the least. At most, some houses collapsed or some yards were in disrepair. It's almost nothing serious, but it's a little strange in the north of the city. Nearly all of those adobe houses collapsed, and even those that did not collapse became dilapidated buildings and had to be demolished and rebuilt. However, there were some houses that were intact. The officials' investigation found that they all used bricks and tiles fired from Dongli Villa. Ji Wei frowned and said, bricks and tiles are inherently stronger, more durable, and resistant to pressure than adobe, so it's not surprising that the house is stronger. Liang Hongchang shook his head, Sir, you have forgotten who live in the north of the city. They are all ordinary families, some are even very poor, but they can build brick houses. Liang Hongchang points out. Ji Wei couldn't understand for a moment, so what do you want to say? Zhang Ning laughed dumbly, Master Liang means that the brick and tile house they live in is sturdy and not expensive, right? The Marquis is absolutely right. Liang Hongchang was very humble and respectful. How could Ji Wei, a scholar, know this? Hearing Liang Hongchang explain the benefits of that house in detail, he became interested and looked at Zhang Ning excitedly, Master Marquis, can these bricks and tiles be supplied in large quantities? Don't worry, Xian Guanju, I won't take advantage of you in vain. Dressed as a mother-in-law, she leads the whole family to turn over. Author, Bamboo Fence Tea. Chapter 337. Chapter 337, Ways to Raise Money. Your Majesty, why don't you go and take a look in person, understand the situation on the ground before making a decision? Zhang Ning didn't want this person to seek medical treatment in a hurry because of a burning disease, and then have all kinds of regrets afterwards. After speaking, Ji Wei felt that he was a little impulsive, so he immediately cheered up and went to the north of the city to take a look in person. When we finally arrived at this place, we saw ruins. The previous streets were buried in ruins and there was no way to get down. The surviving people were still crying for their families on the ruins. It was just on earth. He felt miserable and burst into tears. When he saw the row of abrupt houses, he couldn't hold back the tears on his face. Is this the place you're talking about? Speaking, he turned back to Liang Hongchang and asked. Liang Hongchang nodded and knocked on the door of a house in person. The courtyard looks small from the outside, but there is a lot going on inside. The entrance is a small and narrow door, and you walk through a corridor that is half a person wide and walk to a patio. The patio is surrounded by houses, forming a back structure. There are drainage outlets all around the patio. Ji Wei sees two large water tanks placed in the patio. The rainwater that falls in will flow into the water tanks first, and the excess will flow down the drain. The water in the tank is drained out through the mouth, and the water in the tank is very convenient for washing. Going around the patio and continuing forward, you will find the backyard. The backyard is larger than the front yard. It has the same back structure, with 4 rooms on each side. The door of the backyard opens in the northwest corner, which is much larger than the narrow door of the front yard. A cart can enter. There is a straw shed next to the door, which is very suitable for stacking carts or firewood. Liang Hongchang, the construction manager, was full of praise for the structure of the house. Sir, you see, This yard is different from our usual local construction methods. Most of our yards here are laid out in rows or scattered. Wherever there is a suitable plot of land, we can build it. Wherever you build, those with money can use stones to lay a foundation, while those without money can just use adobe to get over. This yard is different. The structural layout and materials used are very particular from the very beginning, and the foundation is very solid. I heard from the owner of the house that he also poured some soil. I have never seen it, so I can only ask Mr. Yang. Ji Wei first went to the owner of the house and asked about it. He was very surprised when he learned that such a courtyard only cost more than 20 taels. Master Liang, if it is replaced by a blue brick house, how much money would such a courtyard cost? Liang Hongchang quickly replied, about 70 or 80 taels. So much difference, Ji Wei was very surprised. After this accident, the owner of the house was very grateful to Yang Erden and immediately said, young Master Yang is a good man. We are poor. The whole family has worked hard to save for decades and only saved 15 taels. We want to get a. There is no such thing as a good house. Originally, we wanted to build an adobe house, but my relatives from the grassroots family are making mud tiles. He worked with the second young master and made a very good income. Knowing the situation of the grassroots, he told the grassroots that building a house would be a lifelong matter. If he built this house once, it would be impossible for our family to build a second yard in at least 50 years. Who were we fooling? Don't fool yourself either. The grassroots thought what he said made sense, and since the second young master could lend some money on credit, we gritted our teeth and let them repair it. At first, the grassroots people were a little regretful. After all, they had built this yard and owed a lot of foreign debts. But now, the grassroots people are only infinitely grateful. If the grassroots people really messed up a yard at that time, maybe now. He couldn't stop trembling when he thought about the current scene in the city. Ji Wei was silent for a while and looked at the households next door. Where are they? Are they in the same situation as you? The owner of the house shook his head, led a group of people out, and introduced, the household at the far end is the relative who made clay tiles that the grassroots mentioned, and he has seen his house, otherwise the grassroots would not be able to make such a determination. He earned after getting the money. His brother also took the initiative and borrowed some money from him to build a yard. We are all more or less related to each other in this row. Look over there, the one farther away has nothing to do with us. But it's also a job done by relatives of grassroots people. Ji Wei immediately led a group of people to look for them and visited the houses in the north of the city that were intact. He felt confident. At this time, the situation in several counties below Kuzhou Prefecture was sent over. This time only Fujian was affected by the disaster. There were only minor aftershocks in the counties below. Several abandoned houses that were uninhabited collapsed and no damage was caused. Ji Wei breathed a sigh of relief and cried happily again. He recovered and immediately took people to Dongli Villa to discuss the reconstruction of the city with Yang Erden. At the same time, he wrote a note and submitted it. No matter how the emperor would punish him next, he admitted it all. Zhang Ning went to Kuzhou Academy. The academy, which used to be full of books, has now become a settlement place for all orphans and lonely elderly people. As soon as he entered, he could hear the cries of children one after another. Yang Area and Huaji were busy walking around inside, sometimes taking care of children, sometimes taking care of the elderly, and making medicine and cooking. They were so tired that they looked like adults. Seeing Zhang Ning coming, the two of them hurried out. How is the situation? Zhang Ning looked at a room full of refugees, his eyes full of compassion. Yang Area sniffed and spoke with a nasal voice. It was obvious that she had cried several times. Auntie, they are so miserable. Some of their whole families are gone. The children we have sent here these days are doing better. Please comfort them. A hug, a lie, or a trick, but it's different for those old people who have no family members. Look, there is no light in their eyes. They are like walking zombies. The belief that keeps them alive now is the news about their family members. Several grandmothers and grandfathers have said that as long as their family members are dug out and buried, they will follow. Let's go, we can't stop it no matter what, woo. Zhang Ning felt uncomfortable in his heart and sighed silently. Let's find something for them to do, help them out, or look after the children or something. Sitting like this all the time will only make them worse. I will buy a piece of land on the outskirts of the city and build a sales home to take in these orphans, but this matter needs to be negotiated with the prefect. If you work hard for a few more days, someone will soon come to help you. As she said, 2 days later, the county magistrates of various counties under Kuzhu Prefecture sent people to send food, medicine, and clothing to support, and some local wealthy squires donated generously. After Zhang Ning found out, he went to see Zhong Bohan personally and asked him for some calligraphy treasures to give to kind-hearted people. When others saw it, they immediately followed suit and donated money and materials. Neither Ji Wei nor Zhong Bohan expected that sending a calligraphy treasure would have such a good effect. Ji Wei became more active and announced, as long as the donors participate in the reconstruction of Kuzhu Prefecture, their names will be engraved on the city wall. This move is absolutely tempting to the people, especially the landowners, who don't want to be famous for generations to come. The more donations were made, the bigger the name was engraved. In order to stand out among thousands of people, everyone donated money and materials with all their strength. The government's disaster relief funds have not yet come out, but the government has already raised enough money. Zhong Bohan was both happy and worried. Looking at Ji Wei, whose IQ had returned to normal, he couldn't help but said, "Your method is quite good, but the city wall of Kuzhu Prefecture is only so big. Are you sure you can carve so many names on it?" Dressed as a mother-in-law, she leads the whole family to turn over. Author, Bamboo Fence Tea. Chapter 338. Chapter 338, Encounter on the Beach. Ji Wei shook his head decisively. "I have no intention of touching the city wall at all. Instead, I want to build a 100-foot wall on the east coast of the city to resist natural disasters." "Hiss," Zhong Bohan gasped in shock, "do you know what you are talking about? Aren't you afraid of impeachment by the imperial censor for such a waste of money and people?" Ji Wei slammed the table angrily. "What else can those censors do except grow a mouth? Have they seen with their own eyes the innocent people who died under the ruins? Have they seen the desperate people washed away by the flood? Have they seen it? Those lonely old people and children? They haven't seen anything except a mouth that can't speak human words." Zhong Bohan didn't expect Ji Wei's reaction to be so violent, so he hurriedly comforted you. "I know you feel uncomfortable, and why don't we all feel the same? The old prince is old, and in order to stand up for the Earth Dragon this time, he went to the city regardless of the danger and brought himself. All the guards were sent out. Hoye was a female stream, waited to save people, saved money, settled the children and the elderly, and even Dongli Villa took out to collect refugees. Even my willful eldest granddaughter donated more than 10,000 taels of silver she had saved. Everyone wants to do their part, so don't think too much. I heard that you asked Mr. Yang's workshop to bake bricks and tiles, and plan to make all the houses in the north of the city into a unified layout." Ji Wei breathed a long sigh of relief, sat down, and nodded slowly. "That's true. I've seen the house designed by young Master Yang. The layout, structure, and materials are very particular, so it can survive such a severe natural disaster. North of the city unified layout, 4 connected households on the premise of ensuring the safety of the house, can somewhat reduce the cost of building a house. The funds raised now are temporarily allocated 100,000 yuan for housing planning in the north of the city. I have discussed with Mr. Yang that we can build about 4,000 houses. When these 4,000 houses are completed, We will make adjustments according to the actual situation. Since the city wall needs to be planned in the east of the city, those fishing villages will naturally not be able to be rebuilt. I will allocate another piece of land for them in the city. Those fishermen barely survived, and not many survived, so they didn't need much space. Ji Wei's face turned ugly when he mentioned those fishermen. After the government issued the city planning notice, Zhang Xiaoqiu and Xian Kun also watched. The young couple had been helping out at Dongli Villa in the past few days, and now they had time to go to the Chengdong restaurant. They were hoping for a chance and wanted to save some things. When they arrived, they discovered that they couldn't even find the foundation of the restaurant. Everywhere is deserted, except for those who are busy cleaning up the ruins. The young couple gave a wry smile and were about to walk back when they saw a familiar figure busy on the beach carrying a fish basket. The backflow of seawater caused devastating disasters to Fukin, but it also washed up many fish and shrimps from the sea. You might be able to catch some saltwater fish and shrimps if you stir them in the puddles that can be seen everywhere on the roadside, and the things on the beach are even more. There are too many, especially octopus, kelp and seaweed. Once they are exposed to the sun, there is an unpleasant fishy smell everywhere. Zhang Xiaoqiu and Xian Kun both couldn't stand the smell, but Gong Mei could look for fresh food on the smelly beach without changing her expression. The two of them looked at each other and just stood there watching silently. Gong Mei picked up a basket of conchas and rubbed her sore back. As soon as she put the basket on her back and turned around, she saw Zhang Xiaoqiu and the two of them. She paused and walked towards them. Since I have promised to become a monk, I will not go back on it. Wait. After my brother recovers, I will go to Shuiyuan. Zhang Xiaoqiu was stunned for a moment, and then hummed, "Who has time to stare at you? Stop putting money on yourself." Gong Mei didn't take it seriously, hugged her things, and left. A woman who followed Gong Mei looked at the two of them curiously. "Do you know Mrs. Chen Daong?" At the mention of the name Chen Daong, Zhang Xiaoqiu's face instantly darkened. But the woman thought to herself and said, "If you know her, can you advise her? Husband and wife have been practicing for hundreds of years to cross the same boat, and they have been practicing for thousands of years to sleep together. She and Chen Daong finally got married, even if there is something wrong with the Chen family. They also know that they are wrong. Can you please persuade Mrs. Daong to break up and divorce? Now only old Mother Daong is left in the Chen family, and she can hardly live anymore." Zhang Xiaoqiu laughed angrily, put her hands on her hips and angrily said, "It's not that you were abused by the Chen family, nor that your reputation was ruined. Why are you pretending to save the suffering bodhisattva here? You are so pitiful to old Mother Chen Daong, why don't you go and serve her yourself?" "Hey! What are you talking about, little girl? They say they would rather demolish a temple than ruin a marriage, and they don't know what they are worried about when their wives are separated." The woman pointed at Zhang Xiaoqiu and scolded her. Zhang Xiaoqiu was also angry. "What are you so worried about? It's really God's disdain for a rotten person like Chen Daong to die without his whole family. If you ask me, his wife must have done too many immoral things, and her children and grandchildren deserve their retribution. Even if the entire Chen family is alive and well, Chen Daong will also die. It's sick for such a rotten family to think about letting the girl go back." She cursed so loudly that everyone around her heard it. The woman relied on her old man to bully Zhang Xiaoqiu, who was young and thin-skinned. She never expected that Zhang Xiaoqiu was a hot-tempered person who would not suffer any losses and even took the opportunity to damage the Chen family. After the woman walked away in despair, Xian Kun asked people nearby to inquire about the situation here and found out that the woman was also from Qinjia village and was related to Chen Daong's mother. 70% of the villagers in Qinjia village were killed in this earth dragon's resurgence. Chen Daong's family all died in the ruins. Here, only Mrs. Chen escaped because she got up in the middle of the night to urinate. But she was hit by the sudden bad news and became insane. When she saw Tian'er crying in her yard, no one tried to persuade her. When she was tired of crying, she lay down on the spot. When she woke up, she continued to cry. Later, she started to feel in a trance and started to cry when she saw people. He rushed over and called his son. He was so crazy, he probably wouldn't survive if he continued like this. At this time, people in Xinjiang thought of Gong Mei, who had reconciled with Chen Daong. They happened to know that the Gong family had survived, so someone came to ask Gong Mei to return to her husband's house, without mentioning the Chen family's abuse of Gong Mei. When harmony does not exist. Gong's father and Gong's mother beat the Chen family members out and threatened to take them to see the officials if they came again, so the people in Xinjia village had to stop. But this situation is only temporary. After everyone is settled, Chen's mother will be left alone, and Gong Mei will still be entangled in Xinjiang. Zhang Xiaoqiu snorted. She didn't identify with the Chen family at first, but now it's like a dogskin plaster that can't be torn off. But the people in Xinjia village definitely didn't expect that Gong Mei would become a monk. They might not know what their reaction would be when they come to find her next time. Woolen cloth. The couple walked home talking. Half a month later, the people of Kuzhu Prefecture have recovered from their grief and are working hard to rebuild their homes. Yang Erden originally built this brick kiln just for his own hobbies and did not use it to make a lot of money, so the scale was small and the bricks and tiles fired at one time were very limited. Now, in order to supply the entire city, he had to expand production, including the inn. The stables were temporarily converted into brick kilns. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a mother-in-law, she leads the whole family to turn over. Author, Bamboo Fence Tea. Chapter 339. Chapter 339, Alert the Zhou family. The number of workers has increased from the first 7 or 8 to hundreds. Everyone kept firing the kiln day and night. Even if they were tired, they were reluctant to close their eyes. After all, the city was in urgent need of these bricks and there was no time to delay. Yang Erden couldn't manage it alone, so Yang Fugui helped him take charge of several brick kilns. Not to mention, they did a decent job. Zhang Ning saw this and secretly whispered to Mr. Zhou, Qian and Lao Er are not the same couple, but the 3 children they gave birth to are excellent. Mrs. Zhou looked at her son written by Guiguai and lowered her eyelids with satisfaction. I wonder if Da Ya and Ya Fugui were just as troubled as Mr. Qian. Fortunately, something happened to Mr. Qian later, and the 3 children could grow up normally without her influence. Let me tell you, thanks to Grandma and you, without your guidance and 3 children today, counting the days, the results of the government examination should be out soon. What she cares about most now is the affairs of scholars, more than anyone else. Zhang Ning was helpless. I came out a long time ago, but the prefect really doesn't have time to deal with this matter. I guess the results will be released in a few days. Mrs. Zhou looked yearning. I hope all the 3 iron and 4 villages can pass the exam, so that our family can have 2 children. I remember that the Qian family had a child named Qian Wen, and people would look down on them wherever they went. As she spoke, Zhou rolled her eyes and looked at the busy scene in the village. She couldn't help but mutter, "Sister-in-law, you shouldn't have done the masonry work with Erden in the first place. You have a title and you will be given a title in the future, big head. You can make a career by studying in the 3 iron and 4 villages, but Erden only has this kind of village and spends his whole life guarding the brick kiln? Yes. The family property you gave him is already far better than that of ordinary people, and he is almost the same as that of a landowner and squire. But 100 years later, if you give the title to Dadu, what will Erden do? It's not that I, as an aunt, don't hope for his well-being, but the fact is before me that a child with 4 bedrooms will definitely have the worst life in the future. Every time I think about this, I can't understand it. Mr. Zhou also experienced this Earth Dragon transformation and was deeply touched. Because she felt sorry for Yang Erden, she couldn't help but say a few more words to Zhang Ning. Zhang Ning smiled and looked at Yang Legui, who was concentrating on writing, with a deep look. They say that reading is the only good thing among all bad things. If Erden likes reading, I will naturally support him with all my strength, but the prerequisite is that he is willing. If he is not willing, I will force him to. He won't be happy either. Look, among so many scholars, how many middle school students are there? Even if they are admitted as Tongshen, how many people can be admitted as scholars? It is even rarer for a scholar to be promoted to the next level, let alone to be promoted to a jinchi. Everyone hopes that their children will become successful, but only 1 or 2 people can be successful among 100 people. Can you guarantee that you will be the only one among the thousands? Jo was stunned, her face turned a little pale, she opened her mouth and dug her hands unnaturally. Isn't there still a sister-in-law here? If he really can't pass the exam in the future, he can still find a good job. Zhang Ning knew at a glance that Jo was not telling the truth, and immediately shook his head seriously. Third brother and sister, even if I am Guanginho, I can only help introduce the husband and give him some financial support. Whether the child can succeed or not depends entirely on the child. Erden-san, it's the same with Taizai's Huang, and it's the same with Legui. If you place your child's future on me, you may be disappointed. Jo was shocked and hurriedly defended, sister-in-law, that's not what I meant. Zhang Ning waved his hand, it doesn't matter what you think. I'm just telling you that you can only rely on yourself in your official career. No one can do anything about it. The imperial examination is only the first step. If you can really become an official, you will face more difficulties. The prefect Mr. G has endured so many years in the officialdom to reach the rank of 4th rank official now. He looks great, but he also has a heavy burden on his shoulders. I don't know how the Emperor will deal with this time when the Earth Dragon turns around. It may range from demotion to dismissal or even exile. If it is handled properly, maybe the Emperor will give him a lighter sentence, but unless he makes great political achievements in the next 10 years, it will be just a matter of time. Now, he is nearly 40 years old, how many more decades are left? You only see the superficial scenery but fail to see the hidden dangers in your career. Let's talk about academician Zhong of Kuzhu Academy. He is a real celebrity cultivated by a century-old family, and he was the #1 scholar back then. Doesn't he want to become an official? No. It was because he knew that his temperament was not suitable for officialdom, and he would rather stay in Kuzhu Academy than be contaminated by the filth of officialdom. Li Gui is still young now, so it is normal for you not to be able to see so far away. But in a few years, when he reaches the age of marriage, if he still fails to pass the examination, what will you do? Should he find a wife who is the right match for him, or should he follow Madame Zhou's example and let the child wait for a few years until he is admitted as a scholar before proposing marriage? Even if he can be admitted as a scholar at the age of 15 or 16, what about being a scholar? Can you guarantee that he will pass the exam in the first try? Or let him continue studying? You and the third child will also grow old together. In the future, when you are old, what will happen if he has not yet made his mark? You only teach him to study hard, and he will only study hard. Will he be able to support his family by then? Zhang Ning's questions made Zhou's family confused, and she even burst into tears, but there's nothing we can do. The third child and I are here to pay for such a lifeline, what else can we do if we don't point him to get ahead? Sister-in-law, I have 4 sons, any one of them can be promising, but I can't. He's the only one I have. Zhang Ning shook his head, unable to continue the discussion with Zhou, who was in over his head, so he changed the subject. After the autumn harvest, the weather in Kuzhu became cooler day by day, and the 4,000 courtyards in the north of the city were finally completed with the joint efforts of the people. After the replanning, the northern part of the city took on a new look. Not only did it have streets, shops, and courtyards with the same appearance, the original narrow and dirty alleys were also replaced by spacious gravel alleys. The people who were displaced in this earth-shattering situation were finally assigned their own courtyards. It's just that these 4,000 houses can only accommodate most of the disaster victims, and some people are still unaccounted for and are temporarily staying in shelters. The fishermen in the fishing villages also need to be properly arranged. Ji Wei took his plan and came to Dongli Villa to meet old Prince Rui and Zhongning. Your Majesty, I want to build a city wall on the east coast of the city. It is 10 feet high, 10 feet wide at the bottom, and 1 foot wide at the top. Do you think it's feasible? When Prince Rui heard this plan, he became angry immediately. Ji Wei, are you crazy? How did you come up with such a waste of money and people? If the emperor knew about it, you wouldn't even be able to save your head. Ji Wei was scolded without saying a word, but he was very stubborn. Your Majesty, I have read the geographical annals of Kuzhu. According to historical records, there have been several earth dragons turning over in Kuzhu's history. Each time, it started from the corner of the sea, and the houses. The double blow of collapse and seawater intrusion resulted in heavy losses. Xiaoguan has followed the construction officer's advice and built as strong a house as possible for the people, but the intrusion of seawater is really powerless. The only way Xianguan can think of is to build a city wall. Even if a 10-foot-high city wall cannot stop the raging waves, it can still eliminate some of the impact. Ji Wei was as dazed as a demon and kept talking about the benefits of the city wall. From the initial anger to the final heartache, Prince Rui said, "That's all. Since you think this method is suitable, I won't stop you, but if you do something that wastes people and money, I will never tolerate it." Dressed as a mother-in-law, she leads the whole family to turn over. Author, Bamboo Fence Tea. Chapter 340. Chapter 340. There is no such thing as a free lunch. What Ji Wei wanted was for Prince Rui not to interfere and to get the results he wanted, and his tense nerves relaxed a little. Seeing him like that, Zhongning felt very emotional and said slowly, "Master Ji, let me ask a few more questions. Your idea of building a flood control wall is a good one, but is this wall safe? Can it really withstand the raging waves? Don't make things worse." Ji Wei clenched his fists subconsciously. "Don't worry, Lord Marquis, since I have this idea, it's not impulsive. You know Ping Fukushima?" Zhongning nodded. Shuiyuan on Pingfu Island was still the final destination she chose for Gongmei. Ji Wei said, "Pingfu Island is just offshore and is under the jurisdiction of Kuzhu Prefecture." Half an hour after taking the boat, this time the sea dragon turned over. The situation at sea was unknown. The lower officials did not dare to let people take risks. Until these days after the situation stabilized, I took people to the island to check in person. I thought Fukushima would suffer heavy losses, but it turned out to be the opposite. I asked carefully and found out that the islanders of Ping Fukushima live some distance from the sea, and because the island has strong winds and waves, they used the island's stones, shells, and clay to build a windbreak wall. They built a little bit of it every year, and over time, the windbreak wall was already 5 or 6 feet long. High. The official on the island said that when the waves came up, the sea water did rush up, and the height had reached the village. However, the windbreak wall withstood the 2 waves, and the waves that came up behind became lower and lower, and the sea water also moved at the fastest speed. The speed slowed down, only some houses collapsed, and dozens of people were injured. 2 of them were buried by the collapsed houses and were seriously injured, while the injuries of the rest were controllable. Master Ho, it's all down to the official's negligence. If the official had followed the example of the Fukushima Islanders in building a windbreak wall earlier, perhaps there wouldn't have been so many casualties this time. Master Ji is not from Kuzhu, nor has he ever experienced the rise of a dragon in the corner of the sea. How can you think of something that so many prefects in Kuzhu have never thought of? Since you think this move is feasible, I naturally support it, but it's just this money, Zhang Ning said the most critical point. It is difficult for a clever woman to make a meal without rice. How can she make repairs without money? Ji Wei put away those negative emotions and said seriously, the donations raised this time are nearly 1 million taels, as well as food, clothing, and medicinal materials. The people's food and clothing are not a problem for the time being. 100,000 taels were spent on repairing the houses in the north of the city, and we gave up and distributed them to the cultivated land of the common people, as well as several hills and many unclaimed wastelands. Xiaoguan wanted to circle some wasteland to the east to house fishermen. After the city wall was built in the future, it would not be a problem for them to go to the sea and enter the river. Several villages would be built in other wastelands to accommodate the remaining victims. In addition, the Marquis had said that he would build a Silesian hospital. After careful consideration, I think we can build a nursing home in the north of the city near the west side of the city to facilitate the government's management. Mr. Rui listened silently and didn't say much. After Ji Wei left, he commented with emotion, he is a good official, but he is not very lucky. Zhang Ning thought the same way, my lord, why don't you write a letter to the emperor and plead for mercy on Lord Ji's behalf? After all, everything he does now is for the people, and a new prefect might not be as good as Lord Ji. Mr. Rui glared at her angrily, you know how to use me. If Zhang'an stays with you for a long time, he will start playing tricks with me. Zhang Ning sneered twice and immediately put on a flattering expression, Your Majesty, you should be happy that my eldest brother has become more capable. In the future, when he goes out with you, you don't have to worry about him being sold and counting money for others, right? Wrong reason. Angry as he was, Prince Rui went back and wrote a letter to the emperor. A few days later, the government examination results were released. Yang Santi and Yang Sizhuang are also on the list as expected. They should have celebrated in a big way, but now that the situation is like this, no one in the entire Yang family is thinking about it. Zhang Ning could only bring the whole family together to have a meal, even to celebrate his two children. Of course, the news was sent back to their hometown as soon as possible. Li and old man Yang couldn't control it no matter how happy they wanted to be. In the 12th lunar month, after the 4,000 houses in the north of the city, there were 4 more villages with about 2,000 households in the northeast, and 4 new alleys in the northwest, each with 60 households, and the houses were larger than that. 4,000 houses are larger, housing surviving families with more than 10 people. The nursing home and the Silesian home are among them, each occupying 4 houses. The orphaned old man and his child moved in before the Chinese New Year, and Yang area followed and took care of her for half a month. It was not until the government sent someone to take over her that she returned to Dongli Villa. After not seeing each other for a few months, Yang area seemed to have matured a lot. Although she was thin, her eyes were shining with perseverance. Zhang Ning sighed with emotion and asked her about the situation of the Silesian home. Yang area was in a low mood. They have gone from crying at the beginning to now accepting the reality. In just a few months, those children seem to have grown up and become sensible. They used to be naughty and mischievous, but now they are well behaved and obedient. They will also help take care of their younger brothers and sisters. It's just that without their relatives around, I don't know what will happen to them in the future. Although she has no parents to take care of her, she is at least cared for by her grandma, uncle, and aunt, so she is not left alone. But those children are different. Zhang Ning smiled reassuringly at her, don't worry, so many people have lost their lives in Kuzhu Prefecture this time, the prefect will pay attention to every life, and I will not sit idly by and ignore it. I have already discussed with Dean Zhong of Kuzhu Academy. From now on, a teacher will go to teach those children every month to teach them literacy and rationality. There will also be craftsmen to teach them crafts. They can make handy little things or grow food. Selling fruits and vegetables can help me save some money. When they reach the age of 15, women can get married, and men can apply for residence and land from the government office to support themselves. That's great. Mrs. Joe was dumbfounded and couldn't help but be moved. Orphans can not only study and read, but also learn crafts. When they grow up, they can receive fields and houses for free. Isn't this unfair to other people? Sun Yan guessed a little and said softly, Auntie, does the government have other requirements for them? Zhang Ning smiled at her approvingly, smart. The government does not train orphans for free. When they grow up and become independent, they will repay the child twice as much. For example, if the government spends 20 taels to train a child, they will have to pay 40 taels back to the government in the future. This 40 taels can be collected from taxes, or they can pay it back in one lump sum with silver. If you make a lot of money, you should be given more. After all, it is not easy to train officials. The money they return will eventually be used in sales homes and nursing homes. On the other hand, they are also doing good deeds and accumulating virtue. Of course, the Salesian home itself is to help children. Even children with physical problems must be taken good care of. They even cost more money, but the possibility of being able to repay the money in the future is very small, which is why it is necessary to repay double the money.